What's that? No, it's not a Capri, and it doesn't look anything like one. Hello and welcome to the third update video on the Opel Manta project. Since the last video, I've only had a couple of weekend afternoons to work on the car, but I've continued to remove a lot of the engine ancillaries already on it, and the stuff I've robbed from the Cavalier I've either painted or polished up the best I can with some scotch pads and cutting compound. I was tempted to get all the alloy components sent off to a professional polisher so that they have that like mirror finish, but budget and time constraints forces me to just get everything I have on the car as soon as possible. Since the loss of my garage a couple of months back, my nan's very kindly let me use her and my late granddad's driveway here to store the car, but I nevertheless need to get it running as soon as possible should I need to move it from here, or by some miracle I do actually find a vacant garage to rent. Which in this part of the country, they seem to be like gold dust. And that includes council and housing associations as well as private. A lot of the parts I've painted red to be the accent colour I'm going with to contrast and hopefully complement the silver. Some of it is a little questionable, I confess, as once they're fitted, they look out of place being painted. An example of this that I'm a bit reluctant to show you is the bonnet release safety catch, which now sticks out like a sore thumb. Shut up. I'm either going to paint it black like the Rolling Stones, or most likely just strip paint off and have it semi-polished like the other components I mentioned earlier. The now bare engine block has been repainted, as most of the car, including underneath, which we'll look at in a sec, looks factory fresh. But some rust was starting to show through the cast iron block, so this will make all the difference to the finished article. So, let's take a look under the car.
Under here is what makes this car worth every penny spent on it, as finding a completely rust-free Manta for sale anywhere, unless it's been fully restored recently, is near impossible. While we're under here, I'll point to the common problem areas on most Mantas for the benefit of anyone looking at one yourself. So here's the underside of the engine. This fuel pump here I'm going to face in the opposite direction so I can run the fuel lines behind the engine rather than have them flapping around in front of it. This nose cone is new and one for a post-1983 model, which is why this 1979 car has the more modern 1980s look. I've got to get some connectors on these wires which go to the indicators. The lower nose cone here and the inner wing areas are worth checking for rust, as like any car can suffer from salt corrosion and act as a water trap when driving in the rain. So this is the main thing to check on Mantas. This is the start of the inner chassis rails where it traps damp and contaminants around where it curves along the bulkhead and either side of the transmission tunnel, known as the swan necks. The most common place is right where the subframe bolts to it, just before the footwell area. As you can imagine, the repair section is specific and difficult to access with the subframe in place. The lower cross member of the subframe itself seem not to suffer too much from rot, thankfully, especially when they've been sealed or stone chipped, but it's worth wax oiling in the cavity nevertheless. The lower arms look great too. So this is the inner chassis rail on the near side, which are mint on this car, but you will need to thoroughly inspect this area on both sides of each one for anything that needs anything more than a patch weld. Next, and another common rust trap on these, are the front jacking points. You can see a bit of squashed underseal here where it's been on a lift. These can be worse on sunroof models as water is channeled down the A-pillars and onto the jacking points. Also expect some footwell rot too, something this car looks like it's had a bit of in the past and is so far the only sign of weld repairs that I've noticed. There's a little seepage on the gearbox cross member or mount, which I think is coming from the gearbox output seal. Nothing I'm going to worry about for now, as it might just be from assembly, and we'll get a better idea once the car is moving. Now let's take a look at the middle to rear of the underside. It's looking absolutely great under here, with no signs of rot or previous repairs. The rear jacking points are here, where we see the evidence of it being on a lift. These tubes are to accept the Mantas jack, which is a metal rod that's inserted into it and then cranked up and down. My actual purpose for being under here is to remove the adapted bracket to allow the 4-speed gear stick to work with the 5-speed box. It's simply a case of removing these two bolts and a long bolt that goes through the linkage assembly. Then I'm sending it back to the guy who installed it, along with the rest of the 4-speed bits, so he can use them for a future project. Now for the third most important place to check, once you've looked all along the chassis rail box section, the nearby floor areas and jacking points and other sections that branch off of it, is of course the sills. These tend to suffer on most cars since forever, and you'll rarely find a Manta that doesn't have patches near the back of them where the rot tends to be more common, unless it's had them replaced. It's advisable to take this cap off the back of it and fill it with your anti-corrosion product of choice. There are of course a few other places to check, especially on Manta exclusives, as the metal seems to be of poorer quality despite their now being the most sought after model. But I hope this gives you a quick idea on the main 3 problem areas I found on these cars in the past. Mantas really aren't rot boxes, apart from the exclusives as mentioned and the issues caused by something as simple as sunroof drainage channels.
And finally, I got these braided fuel lines with some anodised Jubilee clip covers, which make them look like high pressure AN6 joiners, like drag cars use for nitromethane, and also these separator brackets. I ordered 2 metres of fuel line, and I'm now not sure that's going to be enough for where I want to route the fuel line from the pump across the bulkhead to the carb. I mean, the line and these clips cost 60 quid, so it made me anxious to order 3 metres of it in case 2 would have been enough. I do love how this stuff looks on a finished show engine, but every time I use it, I promise myself never again, as it's such a pain in the arse to cut, and you always get the sharp, frayed strands of metal braids stabbing into your fingers and making it difficult to get the clips over, but here I am still using it. Join me in the next video, where I'm really hoping to have sourced a pair of Recaro seats for this, as I've, fingers crossed, arranged to pick up some from Northampton tomorrow, and I'm just hoping not to get picked up the post like I have been on eBay recently. So please subscribe if you haven't already to be notified of the next video, and thanks very much for watching.